You guys are quick.
Not quite as fast as Jeremy. He's like lightning speed. I think he just stays in the same Zoom meeting all day, honestly. Also, real quick, I did hear back. So one bad on me, I had not followed up with Laura, but I did check in with her, and she's actually out through Wednesday. So she was out Thursday, Friday, and is out through Wednesday.
Okay.
So there's like
That's
three
okay.
stories, I think, where we need her input. I think 2 will go pretty quick. The other one's maybe a little bit more meaty. So I was hoping for at least half an hour and ideally more like 45 minutes with her. So I sent her some times for Thursday.
Cool.
Hi, this is Lindsay.
Hey,
Hi,
Lindsay.
Lindsay. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. Happy Monday. I hope you had a good week.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a number of stories to go through today, and actually Stephen and I were talking earlier. We'll kind of go through an hour, 55 minutes, and then we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll jump back into them. So how does that sound?
Okay. That sounds good.
Great. Okay, and so we did go through all the forms in the During a Child's Stay folder that we had, and actually let me share my screen so you can see.
Okay.
So yeah, that was very helpful. So what I realized though is we didn't exactly ask all the questions that we wanted to in regarding some of the specific stories. So I was just going to run through those real quick, and then we'll keep going.
Okay, that works.
Okay, cool. So let's see. Were there any additional forms besides the ones that we went through last week that you guys want to track information on? And if you don't remember that list, I can pull that up as well.
I don't think so. I do recall that Stephen had mentioned he was going to send like a checklist of things that I was supposed to check on and send over.
Yep. Yep, I got that.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah, because I had written some things down and then didn't write all of them down, I don't think. So, yeah, I'm happy to go through those things as well. But in terms of the different stories, or I'm sorry, the different forms we looked at last week, that should be all of them.
Okay, great. Great, and so that list is still current. And then we already determined that there were no promptings for assessments that we needed. Okay, so then I will move into the next story, which is...
I did think of something.
Okay.
So this isn't a specific form, sorry.
No,
this isn't a specific form. However, like if a family has an order of protection or a special doctor's note about something, or like legal guardianship paperwork, right now we just keep that in paper file folders, but we would like to be able to upload that to like the parent information or the child information. I would anticipate that those would be more related to the parent or child though, as opposed to the admission itself.
Okay. And then when you say parent or child, would it ever be both?
Yes. So any orders of protection related to the parents or the kids would go on both.
Okay.
But like medication information would just go on the child.
Okay, got it. Okay, and then do you have copies of those forms that you could send over to us?
So they're not specific, they're not forms that we have. It would just be like we would keep a copy of the actual order of protection or doctor's note.
Got it. And then you're saying that you would want those attached to both?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. We can do that.
So that would really be the only additional documentation that would be in folders besides those forms we talked about last week.
Okay. And then you're saying that they're not specifically related to an admission, so those could be added in FEP as well.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. And are there any other forms that you can think of or attachments that you?
Nope.
Okay. Great. Then I'm going to scroll on down to 23. So story 23, this is kind of repetitive as well, but I'll read through it and then we can kind of skim over the ones we've already answered. So SLCN 23 is the ability to complete forms, logs, assessments, and checklists on the child. It says, as a direct care staff member, I need to be able to complete forms, logs, assessments, checklists during a child's stay so that I can document the care given to that child during their stay. So one of the questions is, are the forms or logs assessments, are those updated often or ever? And if so, I guess, what does that process look like?
What do you mean exactly? Like the format of them?
Yeah.
So somewhat. Occasionally, we may have to, like one of our funders may change one of their demographic categories, or they all of a sudden want us to start reporting on some specific characteristic of children and parents, so we would have to add an additional field in there. And we are involved in like continuous quality improvement efforts. So there have been times when, we're using a certain assessment, and we determine that there is a better assessment out there that has a better evidence base for our population at this point. And so we could potentially change some of those things. But most of the forms that we have right now have been pretty consistent for a while.
Okay, great.
At least on the respite end. Not on FEP, but on the respite end.
Okay, no, that's perfect. Thank you. Okay, and then we already went through the forms, so I'm going to skip over the forms needed as electronic forms since we went through that list already. So the next question says, do any of these forms have scores that need to be reported on for larger organizational outcomes?
Yes. So the everyday stressor index, we report on that overall stress level from intake to discharge. So whether or not there's been a decrease, increase, or it's remained the same.
Okay.
So that one we certainly report on. Also on the FSP, we report on the number of parents that meet at least one of their goals.
Okay.
So I believe we have like a checklist on there, like they met it or they did not. So so we would count them if they've met at least one of those. They don't necessarily have to meet all of them.
Okay. Now, I don't want to skip ahead, but I was looking at the discharge form. Actually, okay, I'll wait on that because I think there's a discharge story. Yeah, I'll wait on that question. Okay. So then we already talked about signatures, and then, okay, so the question, what is given to the parents at discharge? So of the forms that we went through last time, are any of those printed out and handed over to parents?
Only that FSP with the final goal and additional referrals.
Okay. And then with the forms that we already reviewed, is there any of those that have restricted access? And I know we talked about the art and play therapy forms as well.
So I think just those.
Okay, perfect. And those ones, if we can just go over it again, those ones should not be available to the intake staff.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so I think we've gone through all the forms pretty completely. Is there anything you wanted to add about the forms that we went through during a child's day?
I don't think so. So as far as scores that have to be reported, it's not necessarily scores that have to be reported, but we do count how many therapeutic treatment plans were given each month in comparison to how many were supposed to be given. And the same thing with our developmental assessments.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. Okay, and so are you currently like are you pulling reports on those, or would it be nice to have reports on those?
Yes.
Okay.
So currently we can't pull a report. We have our team counting them.
Okay, got it. Okay, so I was going to say, do you have an example of what that looks like? Because I think that's something that we can recreate in the system.
Yes, so that's going to be our statistical reporting form. Let me pull those up on my screen. And I don't think we sent those over to you.
Okay, yeah.
But I can send it over right now if you're interested in it, because it shows everything that we count for, respite.
Okay. Yeah, and yeah, if we can, I think we can easily build those in the system, or make sure that we're, building it so we can building the, field so we can build those reports in the system, unless you prefer to continue counting them by hand. But I think we can make the system do that work for you.
Okay. Let me see. Sorry, I switched over to my email, and there's like an emergency email about one of the applications we turned in last week. I'm sorry. Can I email back about this real fast, just because it's like has to be to them by 4 o'clock today?
Sure. Go for it.
I'm sorry.
You're good.
It's been a really chaotic couple of weeks.
Totally understand.
Not a good sign when it's been a rough week and it's Monday.
Okay. All right, I am sending over to all of you that spreadsheet that we use for site reporting.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be great.
Okay, and just let me know if this is super confusing, because there are some different abbreviations and things on it that might not make much sense.
Okay. Okay, yeah, no, we'll definitely take a look, and yeah, if we have any questions, we'll follow up. But thank you for sending that over. Okay, so then, yeah, we'll move on to the next story. Then we have this one in kind of shifting topics, but SLCN 24 is that student and data entry work must be approved by a supervisor. So it says, the story reads, as a student or data entry only staff member, I need all of the work that I do to be approved by my supervisor. This includes any forms, logs, assessments are completed, so that collectively we can ensure I am correctly completing the work. And then we still need to put in a definition of done. But our first question is in regards to students. Are there different tiers of students, or are there different students who can do different things in the system?
Yes, so there are different levels of students. So typically our bachelor's level students are only able to answer the phones and do some of that immediate crisis intervention, whereas our family empowerment, or our master's level students, are able to do more of, like, they can help out with some of the groups, they can do some of those non-traditional visits with clients as well on the FEP side.
Okay, okay. Got it. So when they are completing forms and assessments, do supervisors need to sign the student work, or does it just need to be marked as approved by a supervisor?
I would like supervisors to sign it.
Okay. So I guess currently how are they just writing things down on paper and then supervisors are just signing by hand?
So kind of right now, like for the phone logs that go in, we have like, they're putting down the name of whoever the staff member is that's supervising it on the phone log, and then they're putting like entered by students, and they're putting their initials.
Okay. Okay, got it.
So it's not really a great process.
So if I guess, do you want students to be able to enter data directly into the system?
Yes, we would like that, but again, just as long as there's like a prompt that we have to have a supervisor sign off.
Okay, and so then does that mean that you want it printed, signed by a supervisor, and then uploaded back into the system, or would you like electronic sending?
No, I think they can electronically is fine.
Okay, okay. Got it. And then if there is just, I guess, how specific with your electronic signatures are you looking? Do they need to be able to actually have a sign box where they're signing it, or do they need to, we could put records through an approval process where, supervisors get a notification that they need to approve it and then update a status as approved on the record?
Yeah, I think that second one.
Okay, got it. So then our next question is, how do you plan on provisioning student logins? And just to expand on that, do you plan on having like a login that you can repurpose for students, or do you want each student to have their own login and then deactivate and activate those, or how do you want that?
We have a lot of students. So because we have so many students each semester, what would your suggestion be? Because I mean, we'll typically have like, I don't know, maybe like 10 to 15 a semester.
Got it. Okay. Actually, I might.
That are changing over.
Yeah. I might pass this question over to Jason if he's available, just because I'm not as familiar with Magentrix. But I don't know if Jason has another suggestion or thoughts with Magentrix.
What's the question exactly?
So in provisioning student logins, do you have an idea on specifically with Magentrix, since they have like 15 students a semester, does it make sense to create logins for each student each semester and deactivate and activate those, or maybe have some more general login
Well, in order to be HIPAA compliant, you have to have a unique login per person because things have to be stamped with the person who did it rather than just a generic one. So that I would say that they would need each logins, or they would need their own logins. Magentrix does have a batch functionality where you can like batch upload users, which would be really helpful. So you can just, create a little Excel sheet of all your 15 people that you're going to have for that semester, create them all at once, and it'll send them all their login credentials all at one time. And then you can do the same thing at the end of the semester when it comes time to deactivate them. So the Magentrix licensing that you're on is based on active users. And you can never delete a user because if you delete a user, you lose the history of what they've done. So you just have to keep them in there as a log that they worked with you guys. They don't count against your limit. I think you have like 1,500 user limit, but that's all active users. So as long as you're activating them and then deactivating them when they're not working with you anymore,
Okay.
on everything. But yeah, it's one of the like HIPAA guidelines is that everybody has to have a unique login.
Okay.
Okay. I was hoping there was a batch process that we could use, so I'm glad. I'm glad there is. So, and we can.
I've done it for people before, in terms of when they're doing a go live, and I've loaded like a couple hundred people at one time and sent them all their activation emails. So it's really just a matter of making a really simple Excel sheet, and when your students come on board, you just add their names to that, load the Excel sheet, and then save it. When they exit, you load the same thing and deactivate them.
Okay, great.
We can help with that process too, just to make sure it's outlined. Is there anything that students should not be able to see if they're logging into the system?
They should have the same access level as frontline staff. So the same thing that they would not be able to see art and play therapy notes or any notes from family empowerment sessions.
Okay. And so if they're able to see at the same access levels as frontline staff, should they only have edit capabilities based on their education level, whether it's bachelor or master's, or will they know what they're able to edit and not edit?
How much extra trouble is it to restrict what they're able to edit?
It's a profile setting, so it's actually quite simple because you can clone. We can clone profiles and just make minor adjustments. So it's not too much effort.
Okay, yeah, then I think really we want to restrict that to just the phone logs.
Okay.
And those non-traditional visit forms.
Okay. Got it.
And then once we get more into the FEP stories, though, also I guess that's one of the things that we're hoping that they can do is help us with some of the data entry for guardians that like stop by the door for diapers.
Mm-hmm.
So we would also need them to be able to create like a guardian or a child.
Okay.
And then enter things into enter basic information about like our parenting groups.
Okay, got it.
And just to make sure, Lindsay, the bachelor should have access to the phone logs, ability to update guardians and children, but then the master should have everything the bachelors have, but the addition of non-traditional visits and groups. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
So yeah, with just to add in with the profiles, it is easy to clone them and make minor changes to their permissions. However, it is like a double management point. So if there's something that all students should no longer see or need to see, you'll have to update both profiles to make sure all students can see it. So that's kind of the only catch.
Okay.
Profiles, yeah. Okay, so I think that covers everything with students and data entry. So you said, is there any other like FEP scenarios we need to be aware of? I just want to make sure that we're
For our students?
yes.
I guess essentially they could help with inputting. I know I said group data, but also like a special event data.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The main thing that we don't want them to have access to, like editing or viewing, would be those like individual client case notes.
Okay. Okay. For FEP.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
And then could I have you guys hang on for just like 1 second again? I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
Hey, yeah. Were you coming in to meet with me now, or?
No,
So I would be available at 4, 4 to 5. Okay, thanks. Sorry.
No, you're good. I think we covered everything for the student or data entry. Actually, data entry, will they have different permissions than students?
Wait, what do you mean?
I'm sorry. Since it's the story reads student or data entry, I just
think
wondering,
that's
are there other data entry people that have different permissions than students?
No, I don't know why that says, I don't know why that's separated.
Okay. Okay. No, that's okay.
Yep, I don't know who that would be.
I think it's just like when we talked about it just being generic. Like usually it's a student, but you have people that just do data entry. So it's a generic, like lesser role than your frontline staff.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, we'll move on then to the next story. So this is, and we briefly talked about this as well when we were going through the forms, but we'll just run through these questions again. So for 25, it says assessment data elements should generate flags on a child's record. It says, as a direct care staff member, I need certain data elements collected on assessments to generate flags on the child's record so that certain issues or problems are visible without going through each assessment. And I will know when it's done. We need to still come up with the definition of done. So when I think of this story, I'm thinking about how we talked about the early discharge form and how like maybe that should trigger a critical status, but we weren't sure yet. And then also specific to like the medical examination or just pretty much any of the forms. Yeah, what kind of flags you're thinking with this story?
Okay, so I'm trying to think back to the purpose of this story and what we had meant with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking it's probably one of two things. One, it would be good if we have, so for a child's admission, if there is any sort of concern on the medical assessment or on the Denver developmental assessment,
Okay.
we would probably want that flagged so that at discharge, that counselor is discussing the results with the parent and then also providing referral.
Okay. So
Lindsay, I can add some context as I remember what we discussed or where this came from. This was actually.
Oh, good.
And sorry, I've been on the whole time. I'm back at work today, so nice to speak with you again.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm kind of a shell of myself. I'm still on London time. But at any rate, I remember this one. During our discovery session, we talked a lot about a big theme for you guys was that you know, obviously your FEP stuff is connected from respite right now. And so a big thing was just having access to all the data that is collected on your children and your clients on both ends of the spectrum. So being able to see various things. If you're, if you're a counselor and you get a new client, what has taken place in the respite program so far, or the vice versa. If you have somebody come in for respite care, is there anything that, just right off the bat you should be able to see flagged about their time in FEP that you don't want to have to go digging through case notes to find? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. I guess the challenge with that is that anything that would be big enough that they would need to recognize right away like that seems like it should be in critical status. Like if we have a really significant behavioral concern or safety concern with a family that FEP should know about, that would be in there.
Okay. Is there
I'm trying to think what other sorts of things we would have meant by that.
I think, and again, this one it was in the discovery session, so it could be something that's morphed a little bit since you guys have started to see the system, because when you're thinking of requirements, your thought process is a lot different when you're in two different systems right now. So now seeing, critical status could be something that just captures everything you need it to capture, and this story isn't really needed anymore. The other part of this, is there anything in those Denver assessments or in any kind of FEP assessments, or you called them measures, I think, that you would want to automatically set a critical status for?
I don't think so.
So you're fine with with a staff member, whoever's performing the assessment or measure, recognizing that it's critical and going and setting that themselves?
Yes.
Okay. That's totally
because I feel like I feel like it's going to be too hard to standardize it, and I'm worried that if we standardize some of those so that it's auto-populating that critical status, then for some of the things that we don't auto-populate, that people won't do it because they're used to the system doing it for those other items. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I don't think that that's a bad way of thinking about it at all. I think this may be something, just as an administrator of the system, maybe we just keep this in mind and add it as a nice to have or something like that, and throw it in the back of the backlog, because I think I've said this before. A lot of times when you automate too many things up front, it causes a lot of unintended consequences, like you just said, where people get lazy with their data entry, and don't do things they need to do because they're used to the system doing it for them. And the other part of this is that there could be times when it's very hard to think of rules that are standard across every single scenario that you'd ever have. So ever an occasion where a certain thing on an assessment is answered that would normally generate a critical status, but maybe you already know of something and there's something else going on with the child, so it's not going to generate a critical status just this one time. It's very hard to create automation rules that are standard for every single occurrence.
Sure.
I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Probably something that you would want to keep in mind is when you go live, if you're getting constant feedback like, I hate having to go back and update this, is there anything that we can do to help me with this data entry? Then maybe we can look at what those rules may need to be.
Okay. I do think, though, that it would be helpful to have some sort of a flag if there is a concern on the developmental or medical assessment, because right now, I know that that's something that we track and report on, and we track and report on how many of those situations we're providing referrals in, and that's not always happening right now. So I think that could be, I know it's maybe not what we had originally intended with this one, but I do think that something that like pops up on the discharge summary automatically of like, I discussed the results of the physical or Denver assessment with the parents, and then I provided referrals. I don't know. The other thing is that would be something that would be really easy then for FEP to look at and see, It looks like there was a concern that was brought up.
What do you consider to be those results that would generate that kind of notification?
So that would be any developmental assessment that was abnormal or questionable.
Okay.
And then that would be any medical exam that required follow-up or medication.
I think
that's one of my action items was going to be related to the questions we would want to be associated with the medical exams. Is that right, Stephen?
That's right. It'd be the referral pick list choices.
Okay.
I think that, and sorry, you said you wanted that to kind of pop on a discharge summary?
I mean, it wouldn't have to. It seems like that would be the appropriate place for that to like flag and show up.
Okay.
Unless you have a better idea, which I would be open to as well.
Would your FEP counselors be checking their discharge summaries?
That would probably be the primary document they would look at if they're going to look at something.
Okay, then I missed the last feature owner meeting, obviously, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but that sounds like a perfect use of this story to me.
Yeah, I agree.
And then could we likewise just have something on there that shows on the discharge summary if a hotline was placed?
Yes, as in, you mean the discharge form
A
itself?
child abuse and neglect. Yeah, a child abuse and neglect hotline report.
Okay.
So if there was one during that stay, then you want just a little flag on the discharge summary that says it did take place during that stay.
Yeah, or just even a field that's populated. Currently, our discharge summary doesn't ask that, but I would like for that to be just listed on there.
Okay.
And just to make sure I got the medical one correct, was that for like the controlled substances you wanted to see that flagged?
No, that's for the medical exams, the ones, because we had talked about that the medical exams are done on paper and uploaded into the system, so we would like them to be uploaded in, but then also have like a little thing that the staff person fills out of like there were no concerns or concerns identified, that sort of deal.
So if there were, you'd like to automatically see that on the discharge summary of where their kind of referrals are to go next?
Yes.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Okay, thank you.
And you said concerns identified or medication were the two things that you would want to flag?
Prescribed, yeah.
Okay. And then just to make sure I'm recapping this appropriately, the other one was Denver and it was abnormal or questionable, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I think I saw from the notes that's one that you also do on paper. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you're just recording that result.
Yes. So the thought was we would scan it into the system and then record the results.
Perfect.
So my next question is, we have the word flag written in this story. I guess what exactly do you actually want an image of a flag, or would you like something more descriptive? I guess what do you want it to actually look like?
For the discharge summary, I guess it would be nice if there was just like some sort of a little image, just even like a red exclamation or something next to those two if concerns are identified, and then Denver developmental assessment.
Okay.
I think that's enough. And then the hotline report, I think it's okay for it just to be on there. I don't think it needs like a special flag. But the reason that I would like those other two to be flagged is, again, because I want to make sure that our staff is giving referrals for those then.
Got it. Okay.
And remembering to go over that with the parent. We wouldn't necessarily like talk about the hotline report, but the other two we should be talking about with the parent.
Okay.
Maddie, is the red flag thing, is that a stock Salesforce image?
Yes.
Does it look similar to that thing, that Outlook tasks flag that's up in your menu bar?
Yes.
Lindsay, do you see that? The thing in the menu bar that says Outlook tasks, and it's a red flag?
Yep.
Does that look
I think that's perfect.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It looks a little, I think the Salesforce stock image is wavy, but it looks very similar.
Yeah. Okay, I don't have.
And I'm sorry, as I'm thinking about it more, well, nope, never mind. We're good.
Okay.
Let's keep going.
Okay. I was going to say I don't have any additional questions on this story specifically, but actually, and I'll open it up. Jason or Stephen, do you have any other questions? No. Okay.
I want to confirm one thing, Maddie. So the Denver development assessment piece, is that something you're wanting to show up on the discharge summary too, or are you saying to put the flag on the assessment itself?
Oh, I was thinking the flag on the discharge summary.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Thank you very much.
And as we are thinking about it, and maybe this might go more into the discharge summary story, so if I'm jumping ahead, let me know. But it would be good if it pops up on there about like the incident report too, like if there are any incidents reported.
Got it.
Is that something that the parent has to sign off on?
Okay. Yes, actually, I want to pull up the discharge summary. So let me just read through the next story real quick, and then we'll pull it open.
Great.
And we'll talk about it. So, yeah, this is a great segue because our next story is corresponding discharge tracking for each admission. It says, as a direct care staff member, I need for each admission to have a corresponding discharge to indicate the end of the stay so that we can track discharge and related documents. So I'm just going to jump right in to the discharge summary and pull it open.
Great.
Blow it up a little bit. Okay, so right now it looks like the discharge summary is related to several children. Is that the best way, or is that, so currently you're tracking it per family, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And so regardless of who the incident report was for, or kind of all those different flag informations, you want them all to populate on the same discharge summary form?
If possible. So I know this is one of those areas where I think we maybe haven't thought through exactly how it looks, because the challenge is, so there are some outcomes that we track by family and some outcomes that we track by child. And so right now, the way that it is, our discharge summary tracks our family outcomes. So it tracks whether or not a parent met their goals from intake to discharge, and it tracks parent stress level, I believe. And then our individual child admission forms are where we put information about like developmental assessments and physicals. And so I don't know, I would love for them all to be like in one spot as opposed to multiple spots, just because I think that that's easier, again, for like the FEP team member to look at, or for us to look at when we're trying to go back and see like, well, what was the last day like? But I don't know what that would like look like in one form, since again it's tracking like some family data and some individual data. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, so I guess when children are discharged at different dates, what discharge date and time do you put here?
That's the date of the last child's discharge.
Okay. And then is this used for outcomes?
Not right there. Usually, so we don't necessarily, like, that isn't affiliated with the outcome. Like, the only thing that we would track based on the discharge date and time is the length of the child's stay. And so we track that based on their admission form right now.
Okay, right. Okay, and then, so I guess like some of this other information too, like discharge too, if children are leaving at different times or being discharged, I guess, does it happen where children are discharged to different people or different places?
Yes, it does. And so right now that's captured on our paper sign out form. So if we have like a child that dad picks up at 1 o'clock for a doctor's appointment, dad signs that child out and we have a paper form with dad's signature.
Okay.
And then if mom picks up the rest of the kids at 5 o'clock, then that's who goes on this form.
Okay.
So she also signs that form underneath dad and says like what kids she took home. So we've got a paper that shows that actually one of those kids left earlier and we did sign them out, but we only go through the full discharge process for that last child, because that's when we're checking in about like goals completed and things like that.
Okay. Got it. Okay, and so then same with this staying at address, staying at city. Is this important per child or is it just important for the last child?
I mean, I think in theory it's important for all of our kids, but right now we record it for the last child. And typically they're all going to the same place. Like, I don't know that we ever really have a situation, because it's more about whose custody the kids are released into. And they're either released into like parental custody or state custody. So.
Okay. And then if this new address button is checked, I guess, does this ever affect the parent or guardian's address information? So currently we're tracking does this need to be added as a new address if it is a new address?
So what's supposed to be happening in our current system is that if a parent gives us a new address at discharge, we should be updating their guardian record to reflect that.
Okay.
That isn't always happening. Okay. But ideally, if the discharge summary is filled out and we're saying that this is a new address, I would think that we would like that to auto update the household address.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jason, were you going to say something?
Is it based on the discharge 2 that's above? So let's, in the scenario where mom and dad have split custody, and let's say dad picked one child. Let's say dad was the one that made the last discharge. He picked whether it was all of the children or just some of the children. Is that new address thing his address, so it should only update his primary address?
Yes.
Okay, so it needs to, if you check new address there and you add a new address, it needs to update whoever's in the discharge 2 field, it needs to update their address.
Yes.
Okay.
So is the discharge 2 person typically the same as the guardian that you're attaching to this discharge?
Like 90% of the time.
Okay.
So I guess that's where the challenge is too, because you can't have, for instance, you have a parent that goes into the hospital and she says, well, I'm going to be in longer. My sister is coming to get the kids. So then the children are discharged to that sister, and we want to have the sister's contact phone number and contact address just in case something would come up, like Children's Division comes by and says, we can't find these kids. Where are they? We can say, well, we discharged them to the sister. Here's her address. Here's where they're at. Mm-hmm. So it should be corresponding to the discharge too.
Okay.
Which I hadn't thought about.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, should the discharge 2 always be a contact in your system?
Yes.
Okay.
Because they should already be listed as like the child's emergency contact.
Okay. Got it.
So Are you, sorry, real quick, Lindsay, are you wanting that to auto-populate with the child's emergency contact then? And then if it needs to be changed, it should be changed?
No.
Okay.
And so so if the discharge to is always a contact, we should always have the relationship to child and the contact phone already in the system.
Yes, in theory we should.
Okay, so these maybe could all be auto-populated so they're not rekeyed.
And as I'm thinking about it, I'm trying to remember back when we did the child info, did we talk much about emergency contacts and like child custody and things?
It's a great question. I do know we did build out relationships in the system. And let me see. I think that's where we talked about those additional people. So, sorry, I'm clicking through now.
No, that's okay.
There's an emergency contact field that's just a yes or no that's on each relationship. So if you click into any of those, am I on mute? No, I'm not. If you click into any of those and then go down to like their children, their dependents.
Oh, okay.
Go to the child. And then scroll down. So on, and it can be added to this related list if you want. But if you click that relationship, there's that emergency contact field over there. So if you wanted to add like a sister or something like that, you would just create that relationship and say that, yes, they are an emergency contact.
Okay.
I don't think that we've done a ton of things with custody. I know if you go back to the child record, I know there are things down here. Hold on, slow down. There you go. Shared custody, yes, and then shared custody detail is there.
Okay. I think that's okay.
And then Maddie, can you do me one favor? Can you go scroll back up? And then
So we linked emergency contacts with primary guardian.
sorry, one second.
So right now I clicked into a child's record. So this is Kimmy and her mother is Abigail. And so Kimmy has her own list of relationships. Right now, the only relationship that's in there is her relationship to her guardian, her mother. We'll say it's her mother in this case. So we're just saying that it's current. But if you wanted to add another relationship to Kimmy, the child, you would click the new button and you would be able to say, this is, we'll say it's family, and we can relate her to, I'll just relate her to myself since I'm in here. Oops. Maybe and then I'm a current family member. I am an emergency contact, and we're in positive standing. And then I could add in
Got it. Okay.
allow phone calls, release of child. So that's relating to a contact that's already in here. If the contact was not in there, you could click the lookup icon.
And just add them.
Yeah, and add them in there.
Great. Okay. Thanks. I'm sorry. There have just been so many pieces to it that I was sitting there like, I don't remember talking through all this. But yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, I had to go back and look as well. So, yeah. So,
when you said emergency contact information, I like had a panic moment and I was like, did we not do anything with that? So I had to go back and look it up myself.
Right. So
yes, and whoever we're putting in the discharge to field should be somebody that we have already created, because it should be somebody listed as an emergency contact, or that the parent has already called in and said, this is who's picking up the child, this is how they're related, and this is their phone number. So that should be somebody in the system. So you should be able, yes, to like import those things.
Just repopulate that information. And then what's nice is if we are auto-populating this and pulling this from the contacts record or from that relationship, if the contact phone changes, that would update on this discharge summary as well. So it wouldn't be, incorrect in one place and correct in another. So I think that would be good. Okay, so then we determine that if it's a new address that we're entering in this staying at address field, we're going to update that contacts record. And then, so I guess this note says that check this box if the discharge address is different than the admission address. And then we have a field for the admission address. Is this something that should also like pull in from the admission?
So the purpose of that field on the form we currently have is because we do all of our own billing. So the program coordinator would look at this to see where the family started and where they ended, because that impacts how we bill. And so I would imagine if the system's doing a lot of the billing for us, I don't know that we necessarily need the admission address to be in here at this spot.
Okay. Got it. That makes sense. Okay, so then this next part of the discharge summary is about goals. And my question, or our questions with this, was if this is building upon the FSP.
Yes. So, and again, this is where it gets kind of like tricky to work through all of it, because we do so much duplicate paperwork right now.
Yeah.
So yes, all of this is essentially, if they've already gone back over the FSP with the parent, this could all auto-populate.
Okay. Now, so, and as opposed to auto-populating, what if they were able to update this information on the FSP itself?
Yeah. So like if they go in there and review the FSP with the parent, and they like write down on there what that parent has achieved and whether or not they met the goal, then that should be able to pull in, because otherwise it's double work.
Right. Okay.
Right now, this is usually something that the intake counselor fills out like post the parent leaving.
I see. Okay. And then this goal met and the additional referrals are the two pieces that are important for agency outcomes.
Yes. But again, we should be pulling that off of the FSPs to measure this outcome, I think. I guess we just need to decide where we want to pull things from.
Yep. Okay. I see. So all of this information is just from the FSP itself. It's already on there, is what you're saying.
It should be, yes.
Okay, got it. I was confused. I don't know why. Okay, so then we have all the goal information, and goals 1, 2, and 3. This matches the FSP exactly. Is that correct? Like in long-term vision?
Yeah, all of this should be in the FSP.
Okay, great. Okay, so then, and then is the other referrals piece part of the FSP as well, or is that part of the discharge?
Yeah. Because the FSP, like when we say discharge, we kind of like, we lump in that second everyday stressors index, we lump in the FSP, and we lump in this guardian or this discharge summary form.
Okay, and then in terms of items given, is this something that you are keeping an inventory of, or I guess how are you currently tracking the items that you're giving away a discharge?
We aren't really. I mean, I think in theory we put them on here and we could total them up each month, but we don't ever. We should, though. It would be nice to start tracking that.
So
Okay.
this was an item we talked about in Discovery, and it's actually in the original Discovery report, not the requirements, the Discovery report. This was something that we flagged as like an item for future consideration, is that you guys aren't doing inventory of any of the items that you're giving away. And we kind of talked about how that it's, you can do a lot better reporting and things like that, but that was something that we had talked about in the Discovery report as being like a future consideration or future phase. You can still record them here, but it was something we talked in terms of building up that like inventory type thing, because it's a whole different type of system to manage, to always be adding inventory of your items.
So
it was just something I remember you guys said in the Discovery, like you're not even there yet. Thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was just going to add in too that we do have a separate story for community outreach items given tracking. And so I guess my question here is, would you potentially want to track those items the same way? Or would you prefer to keep them in a list in the discharge zone? Okay. Because I think it would be a step up from just writing it in the text box would be to have maybe a pick list and then a number field, so it's easier to report on. Okay.
I think that'd be great.
Okay.
And we can take off the services still needed box. That was something that we had like before we did the FSP. And so ideally with the FSP, they're talking in that third goal about any additional support the parent needs and giving referrals. So we don't need to include that box.
Okay. Perfect.
So I guess as I'm thinking through this, like the discharge summary, the way that we had it before, like we were using that to pull like reporting information and things like that because we had such a crummy system. But my hope would be more so in this system that the discharge summary would truly be just like a couple page document that reflects like that family stay. So you'll be able to look at that, see who the kids left with, see what the parent accomplished, see if there were any like big concerns that came up with the kids, like truly just more of giving a summary of the child's stay. Because a lot of this we should really be able to pull in from other forms that we're doing, because even that discharge stress level, they should be just pulling that in from that everyday stressor index that we do with parents.
Okay.
That's how we fill out this form now. So like that could come in, we could just import that in from the FSP as well. So it, essentially like there's not really a whole lot on this form that the counselor would be filling out.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm gathering.
And the same thing, because with the admission page that we're filling out about each child at their discharge, like I'm just wondering if there's a better way that we can kind of consolidate those two items.
Right. Yeah. I do think there is. I think we'll just kind of take all the pieces and talk through it to make sure that it's as streamlined as possible. But yeah, I think we're all on the same page.
Okay.
I guess so. So you're not printing out this discharge summary, and this is not being given to the guardian, correct?
No.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, so then is it okay if we click through some of the other forms that you have or that we have in the discharge folder?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so the next one is the description upon discharge. This is very different from the description upon admission, or at least the copy that we have. So we noticed that it's just a checkbox. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's because this is essentially just to note if there's any new cuts, marks, or bruises on the child.
Okay, so if there are none, if there are no new marks, does this get filled out?
Yes.
Okay, and it's just a blank. Just new marks is not checked.
Yes.
Okay.
So the idea being that this is that staff member that does the discharge saying that I have checked the child over, they haven't gotten any new marks during their stay that weren't here when they were admitted, and signing off on that.
Okay, got it. And then it's per child. Okay, perfect. And then the parent discharge survey.
So we currently do this on paper, and I think, and it is anonymous.
Okay,
So I think we will continue to do this on paper for the time being.
perfect. And then the discharge release form and incident sign off.
So this is the one that I was mentioning, that if you had like several children discharging at different times, then you would have more than one of these.
Okay.
And this is something that we definitely need the hard signatures on.
Okay.
And it would be good to have these. Is that all it says? Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's more. Yeah. Okay, so is there, so you want to continue doing these on paper then?
Yes, because we do like to have like a paper signature from the parent that they picked up the children at that date and time.
Okay. Now, with some of the, like the incident report and the medical report, they are rewriting this information, correct?
Yes, and so that's where maybe if for the incident report and for the medical report, like if instead there was a way that they could just like print the ones off from the database and have the parent sign.
Yep. Okay, yep.
That seems like that would make the most sense.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we're thinking on the same page. Yeah.
And that's where, again, it will be especially helpful if we've got those little flags on that discharge summary, or it could be, I guess, I was saying discharge summary, but I guess it could be on that child's like admission form if they're completing that. I don't know, just somewhere so that when that intake counselor is going through the discharge, it like flags to remind them, oh yeah, there was an incident, I need to print that out. Oh yeah, there was a medication, I need to send that home. Oh yeah, there was a medical concern. So,
and then is this for, okay, so this could be for one child or it could be for multiple children, correct?
Yes, so typically it's for all of the kids.
Okay.
However, there are occasions when it's just for one, and then we have to do a separate one for the rest of the kids when they're picked up.
Got it. Okay. All right, perfect. I don't think I have any more questions, but it's, okay, yeah, I do not have any other questions on these ones. Jason or Stephen, do you have any other questions on any of the discharge forms that we went through?
Nope.
Nope. Thanks.
And then one of the things that's not on here, but really I guess should be in the discharge forms, is that we, that child admission form, we currently update that at discharge.
Okay. Perfect.
So, because I believe that you made the admission form based on the one in our SharePoint system. So on there, it shows like how many therapeutic treatment plans they were supposed to get, how many they actually got. It shows if they were supposed to get a Denver, whether they got one, and then what the score was. So some of that info that I talked about flagging on the discharge summary, I don't know, maybe we should flag that on the child's admission form.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I feel like I'm pretty scattered with this story, and I apologize. It's just really different from how we're, like,
Sure.
the system we have right now is not great, and it's a lot of repetitive work, so.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, this is just like a dump of all the information we can gather, and if there is, you know, a smoother way to build it in the new system, we'll, you know, see what you think about it and test it out and go from there. So, yeah, no need to apologize. So, I'm just reviewing the other questions that I had on this story. So I think it's what we already know what's printed and filled, and then sure. Okay. Okay. Yeah, actually, I think we're good on this story for now. Jason or Stephen, do you have more questions you want to ask for discharge?
No, ma'am.
I do have one. I do have one question about
Okay.
the very last thing we ended on there. Lindsay, you said maybe the flags that we have showing things on the discharge summary you would actually want to do instead or in addition to on the child admission file.
Maybe instead. I guess it depends on how you guys end up building it to some extent, because if the discharge summary truly becomes something that's really just importing data from other data points and putting it all into a summary, then it wouldn't necessarily go on there. We would want the flags then on that child's admission form.
Okay. Okay.
But so we probably don't need them in both places.
And the idea for the flags is more for someone like on the crisis nursery team that's reviewing information about that child, or like for a discharge summary, if that child comes back and has another admission, they're probably going to look at the last discharge summary to get some background. Would you want the flags on there in a consolidated document?
Oh, I see what you're, so it's really both, I suppose, because we would want those flags to be there for that staff person that's doing the discharge so that they're discussing everything with the parents. But then we would want to really easily be able to see that on that discharge summary so that if we're just pulling info about the child's stay. But it might be something where it's flagged and you enter it on the child's admission form that you're updating, and then it just like pulls and automatically populates into that discharge summary.
Okay.
I think it's really like a design thing right now, Stephen. I think like what we just went through with the discharge stuff, it all seems to be stuff that we're automatically pulling from other places. And I think we may try to design something that, like, we call them like child admission files or something like that, but where that just represents the whole thing. And there's an admission section and a discharge section on that one form. So I think it's really about how we end up designing the discharge process.
Okay.
Okay. So since we're 15 minutes over or 15 minutes late into our second hour, however you want to put it, do we want to take a 5-minute break real quick and then jump into the next stories? Anybody?
We'll be happy to. Lindsay, I think it's probably mostly up to you. If you need a few minutes to check emails or check in on any other things, we'd be more than happy to give a few minutes.
If I could just have like 5 minutes to run to the restroom and maybe send a quick email about some of these couple things that I have popped up, that'd be perfect.
Okay.
So then reconvene. It's like 3:14 at 3:20.
Yep.
That'd be
Sounds
perfect.
Good. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks.
Good.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Hey, Maddie.
Hello.
Looks like
Hi, I'm
Lindsay.
back to you.
I'm back too.
Hi, Lindsay. Welcome back, everyone.
Super refreshing.
Good. Okay, so the next stories that we have, laid out for this sprint are kind of switching over to FEP and going over some of the home-based counseling stuff. So there's just 4 stories, so we'll see if we can get through them in the next 40 minutes, if that's cool.
Okay, and if not, I can always look at, I know you guys had sent some other dates out. I would imagine some of those have been filled, but I'm sure we can move something in the good.
Yeah.
And a few of them too at the end, Maddie, I think will be more for Laura on the billing, and it sounds like we'll probably meet with her on Thursday. So
yeah. Yep. We have a couple, respite billing ones too. So, okay, so we'll dive into this first FEP one. So this is 56, the treatment plan goal tracking story. It says, as an in-home staff user, I need to track goals which are collected on the treatment plan so that I can work on them with the client throughout the duration of the FEP program. And I will know that it is done when the system can track goals and action items, that goals and action items can be updated with each service, and that the status is captured on each goal and action item. And the system should track it. So I guess our first question, we do have a list, or a folder in SharePoint of FEP, forms that you're using. So we didn't specifically see one called treatment plan, but we did see one for, I think it was called goal setting form. So first is what is a treatment plan, and is it different than the goal setting form?
Yes. So when we originally sent those documents over to you, that was, I think, November, December. And in January, February, we did roll out a little bit of a new process for our family empowerment team. And so if any of the meetings that we had after November, December, we were referring to like our new process, but you may not have the forms for them. So we have, and I can send it over to you, but essentially any families that are engaged in traditional family empowerment. So I know we've talked about like our non-traditional families that we're just doing some of those crisis intervention case management visits with. Those families don't have an overarching treatment plan.
Okay.
But any of our families that are fully enrolled in family empowerment program and are doing assessment measures and things like that, they have an overarching, I think it's called like the family-centered therapeutic treatment plan. Okay. And so they have multiple goals, and at this point in time, those are kind of like drop-down pick list goals, just because that seemed to be the easiest way to do it. And so they have, I'm trying to remember, I think most of them have like 3 main goals that they're working on. And then the idea is that any sessions that they're doing with families should relate in some way to one of those treatment goals.
Okay.
So they still do that goal setting sheet in their individual sessions with clients because those are more specific. But those specific things that they're doing in those in-session goal settings, like those are related to those bigger overarching goals. And there are things like maintaining stable housing or, getting disability, or I don't know, they're like bigger goals.
Yeah. Okay. And you said that you're using a drop down for those overarching goals.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Let me pull it up so I'm looking at it so I'm saying the right things because I haven't looked at it in a little while.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I take it back. There are 6 goals that they're setting for the overall, and there's 2 typically related to case management. Typically there's 2 related to parenting, and 2 related to counseling or clinical concerns, but they can switch that up if they want to, but they have to have at least one goal in each of those 3 areas.
Okay. Now, does a treatment plan relate to like one parent or guardian, or can it relate to multiple guardians?
If they're working with 2 guardians in the home, it could relate to both of them,
Okay.
but it's one per household.
Okay. And does it relate to specific children in the household, or does it not have to be that specific?
It doesn't have to be that specific.
Okay. And then at what point are they completing the treatment plan, as in, I guess, the initial treatment plan?
So it's usually done in the first like 2 to 4 visits.
Okay. Okay.
And then it serves as that map for what we're doing with the family.
Okay. Is it something that's printed out and given to the guardians?
I don't know that they're giving a copy to the guardian, but that would be wise.
Okay.
They're going over it with them, absolutely, and then they're doing like check-ins with it.
Mm-hmm.
So let me go ahead and send them over. So right now what we have, I'll send you over the planning tool.
Mm-hmm.
Because the planning tool is what they're actually taking out to the visit with the parent. So this is not like an e-copy of anything. And it just says at the top, like, what are some of the big concerns that the family is demonstrating? And then they kind of go through it with the family and they pick out, like I said, that's where they kind of look at those drop-down lists and say, these are the couple of goals we want to pick. And then there's a formal family treatment plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so on that, it has like, they list the goals, and then they have like a 6-month check-in or like a midpoint check-in. So they say, how far have we come on this goal? Where are we at with it? What have we done related to this goal? And then there's a graduation check-in too.
Okay. Okay. And so when they're checking in on the treatment plan, is that just with the guardians, or are there more like additional staff involved besides the FEP counselor?
No, that's just with the guardian.
Okay.
And then one of the things that we're tracking for our funders is how many of our parents have met at least one of their goals on the treatment plan.
Okay. Okay. And then, so just going, is this goal setting form, this is not directly related to the treatment plan, but it is filled out with each session that the FEP counselor has.
Yeah, and in theory, like, it should be related to at least one of the goals.
Okay. So it would be helpful if they could pull in a goal to review in this form?
It would be helpful if, like, somewhere on here we had something that said, like, the treatment plan goal that the session was related to.
Okay. Got it.
Sorry, this may have been said earlier, but I think I missed it, or I'm not just now confused. Is it one goal per session?
Yeah, I mean, they'll probably be working on one overarching goal per session, but I guess there's a possibility that maybe they talk about parenting and they talk about like a case management goal too. I guess there is that possibility.
So multiple goals can be worked on in one session?
Yes.
Okay.
And so is this form still pretty accurate, even though the treatment plan was revamped?
Yes, this form is still pretty accurate.
Okay, good.
Okay, and I just sent that email.
Okay, great, thank you.
And it's got like a sample completed treatment plan as well.
Oh, okay. Great. real fast.
And currently this one that you have up on the screen, this is one that's a carbon copy, so they write on it by hand and they give a copy to the parent.
Okay. I see, and that's why there's a signature.
Yes.
Okay. And so then is this something that they will upload and rekey into the system, or?
So the way that they're doing it now is they're also doing a case note on each session. So they'll usually, when they're writing their case note, refer back to this goal setting form, but their case note is not going to be nearly as in-depth. So their case note isn't going to say, like, we set goal 1 as this, and then these are the action steps. The case note is more of a general overview. And then this goal setting form goes in their hard file, and usually they'll bring the goal setting form from the previous session to the next one just to help remind them, like, what the family had been working on.
Okay. And so that's something that they'll continue using.
Yes, I think we envision them continuing to use it. However, it would be nice if this goal setting form could be uploaded and linked to each contact note.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And when you say contact note, is that the same thing as case note?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so let me pull up, this is the sample treatment plan. And so is the midpoint check-in date and graduation date, are those scheduled or are those actual?
Those are actual.
Okay, so they get filled in when they happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so then is this, okay, so is number 1 the goal? This is like the drop down.
Yeah.
Okay, option. And then is there anything entered at enrollment when they select?
So at enrollment, we would just enter in the goals themselves, and then we would need a space for progress notes at the midpoint, and then we would need a space for progress notes at graduation. Okay. So the therapeutic treatment plan should be like a document that they complete during that initial enrollment phase, but then they continue to add to throughout interaction with the client.
Okay. And then the client does sign this form.
Yes.
But does not receive a copy of it.
No, but they really should. So this is like a great thing to be talking through.
Okay. Okay.
And maybe some of those counselors are giving parents a copy of this. I'm not sure.
And the counselors are completing this information, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so is this something they also want to continue doing by hand?
So I think we definitely need in the system, we need this in the system, and it doesn't necessarily have to have the signatures on it, but we do want a treatment plan in the system that, like, the supervisor can access, that counselor can access. And then the thought being that if they take progress notes at midpoint that they're taking by hand, that they're then entering those in the system when they get back from that visit.
Okay. Okay. Let me look at.
But essentially, this should be one of the file items that any traditional families have in the system, is that they should have a treatment plan that the goals have been filled in on.
Okay. I'm just looking through the other ones. Oh, okay, I see. I'm looking through the other documents you sent. So they're just copying from the Word document, the tool, and then pasting it into the notes document. And then, okay.
Yeah, so that planning tool doesn't need to be in the database, but you could use that pick list from the planning tool for the goals part here.
Yep. So yeah, I don't know. Jason and Stephen, I'll just pull it up real quick so you guys can see. I think real quick. We'll see if it opens real quick. Okay. So then are these lines just for additional?
For them to write in.
Okay.
Yeah, if they like, so because the whole having an overarching therapeutic treatment plan was really new for some of our FEP staff members.
Mm-hmm.
So the point of this planning tool was to help them really to walk through, like, okay, I'm setting goals based on the things that the family has expressed they're concerned about during assessment. So what concerns have I seen? So it's just like, yeah, they don't have to fill that piece in. This one is just a tool for them to use to help them complete
I see.
the therapeutic treatment plan.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, so Stephen or Jason, do you have any more questions about the therapeutic treatment plan tool or the sample plan?
Nope.
My only question on that tool, and I apologize if I missed this earlier, but is this really, I know you were saying it's really meant more as like a worksheet type of thing that someone uses to plan. Are you wanting to actually document this in the system and attach it to that treatment plan?
No, I don't think we need to at this point.
Would you want to upload it and attach it to the treatment plan?
I'm gonna say no right now because I don't know that everybody like fills it out in great depth. Like I wouldn't want it to be required. I guess you could give the option of it, but I wouldn't want it to be required.
Okay.
Well, so my next question in regards to the therapeutic treatment plan is if the family support plan and respite plays any role when the therapeutic treatment plan is created. And I guess that's assuming that they go from respite into FEP.
Yeah. So ideally, when that person is completing the first call form, because the parents, so if they flowed through our program in kind of a very traditional kind of way, that parent uses respite care, they would have gotten a first call. The person who's doing the first call should have reviewed the FSP. And so on that first call form, they're going over those concerns with the parents. And that should be more of a conversation point of, oh, I see when you completed your family support plan with the nursery, you said your third goal was that you really wanted to get into school. Is that something that you feel you want to work on with your family empowerment counselor? So then that information gets carried into the first call form, and then that first call form becomes part of that assessment process that informs the completion of the therapeutic treatment plan.
Okay, so they don't necessarily need to be related in any way. They just communication needs to occur and will occur. And
yeah.
Okay, great.
And it's nice because if a family that's in FEP is using the nursery, then that FEP counselor can review it and can see like, oh, well, they told respite staff that they really want to work on getting a new car and they have never mentioned that to me. So like, then that's something I can bring up in my next meeting. And so it's, just for the purpose of keeping everybody in the know.
Okay. Okay, great. So I don't have any more questions on this one then. Stephen or Jason, any other questions?
Nope, I'm all set. Thanks so much.
Great. Okay, so we'll just keep moving right along. The next story is client graduation tracking. So this is also FEP. It says, as an in-home staff user, I need to track client graduation so that I know when a client completes the program. I will know that this is done when the discharge process and updated care plan are included in discharge. Upon graduation, the client status should update to graduated. The discharge summary should be tracked on or related to the client, and the graduation service should allow for in-home staff to review resources and additional referral agencies. So I think we have a discharge summary form in here. I'm just going to pull that up. Okay. So yeah, and I guess if you could just start in general with what discharge and graduation. Wait, is discharge and graduation the same thing? I'll start there.
So discharge and graduation are not the same thing.
Are not
So this form,
okay.
they're not. So this form is completed for anybody that graduates or is discharged. So parents can discharge in a couple of different ways. They can graduate, meaning that they have met the goals on their therapeutic treatment plan. They can discharge because of lack of contact, so we just can't get a hold of them anymore. Or they can discharge because they just opt out of the program. Anytime that they just stop in the middle, that's just a discharge.
Okay.
Whereas if they complete their therapeutic plan, then they've graduated. And so for clients that have actually graduated, we did, with the new paperwork, include a graduation form too. So I'll send that over.
Okay, great.
It's just called the aftercare plan for families.
Okay.
And I apologize that, these things we updated after we had sent over the initial form.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's why we use Agile, is because we know processes change. So, well, and I'm also wondering if maybe we should change the title of this story to say client discharge tracking, because we don't have anything that kind of encompasses everything. So I think we should update this story name and then just include all of discharge, any type of discharge in this story here. Okay, so let me go back. And then this form is filled out, you said, at any discharge.
Yeah.
Okay. And even if they do graduate?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great.
So graduation.
And this is another one.
So, sorry, real quick.
This one was more.
Go ahead, Lindsay. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say this one was, so the thing with our FEP forms is that, like, as crazy as some of our RESPA forms are, some of our FEP ones are just even more crazy because we don't have any kind of a database tracking. Like, everything's done on spreadsheets. Mm-hmm. So a lot of this information is collected because of reporting purposes on this discharge summary. Mm-hmm. And some of these things have, like, since changed. So the assessments that we do at the bottom, these are not the assessments we give anymore that are on this form.
Yep.
So I can send you our new program outline for FEP that tells you, like, what assessments we're actually doing and when, if that's helpful.
Okay, yeah.
For those different assessments, would we be able to get copies of the assessments themselves as well? Or I guess, are you just talking about, like, the risk assessment, the ICS?
So the risk assessment, we don't do anymore.
Gotcha.
The ICS we don't do anymore. The ISE we don't do anymore. And only one of our regions does the IPA.
Okay, gotcha. So I misread. I was thinking that there was actually, like, more questions and things down below, but it's really just a score area. So, okay, that would be perfect. I will put that on the little checklist of things too.
Yeah, and then instead of parenting skills and coping skills, we use protective factors now.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, I think that'll be great. And so the assessments will still go on the discharge, the FEP discharge summary.
Yes.
Okay.
And it'll still be good because we should have down here, instead of parenting skills and coping skills, like I said, we track protective factors, and that is one of the things that even if we have a family that enrolls and drops out 3 sessions after enrollment, like, usually we can still have seen gains in each of the protective factors. So that's a big outcome that we track.
Okay. Okay, yeah, this will be good. And I was looking ahead, so we kind of went out of order when we prioritized these stories, because we do have a story in the next sprint, in sprint 5, to go over in-home staff client measure tracking. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, just with the amount of work that we're taking on with the respite care pieces, we're saving that one for the next sprint to kind of spread
Sure.
out. So yeah, we're kind of out of order, but this is still good to get those updated so we can update this discharge summary form. But yeah, so then, and then you sent us the graduation form as well, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And that one we call like the aftercare plan for families.
Okay. And that's only for families who graduate.
Yes, unless we have somebody that's like, hey, I'm moving to another state, so I have to drop. We would still, if we still have contact with the family and can have a last visit before we know they're discharging, we would always fill it out. It's just that typically with our families that discharge, it's because we just can't get a hold of them anymore.
Okay.
So essentially anyone that's kind of in like good standing, for lack of a better phrase?
Yeah, we would complete that with.
Okay.
So, and we certainly have so many transient families, so it isn't super uncommon for somebody to say like, hey, I'm moving to Indiana next week. And so we would still try to do that aftercare plan.
Okay.
And that the family does get a copy of.
Okay, that was my next question. Thank you. Okay, so if they get a copy of it, is this something that the system can print and that you can hand over, or is it something that they fill out in person and we're going to upload it into the system?
So right now they fill it out by hand on a carbon copy form. Mm-hmm. And so I think we would want to continue to do that so that the family has a hard copy of it. Mm-hmm. And then I would think we probably want it typed into the system too, though, because we would want to be able to possibly track some of the things on there.
Okay. Okay, got it. Now, should the aftercare plan be specifically related to a just discharge summary, or should it be, I guess, related more generally to like a guardian or a household?
Okay, can you say that one more time?
All right, that may not have made sense. Yeah, does an aftercare plan need to be related to a specific discharge summary or a specific graduation?
Yes, I think it should be.
Okay. Because
we do occasionally have families that re-enroll.
Okay, yep, that's great. I think that's actually the next story to talk about. Okay, so then in regards, so I don't think I have any more questions on this one. I'm going to throw it out to Jason or Stephen if you guys have any other questions.
I'm good, thanks.
Okay.
It was very helpful.
Great. So then I want to move on to the next story then, which is client re-enrollment. So this says, as an in-home staff user, I need to re-enroll clients so that I can track services after they graduated. I will know that this is done when the client status can be updated to re-enrolled. There's flexibility to choose which enrollment papers are required, and they must be able to differentiate between just a follow-up support visit and full enrollment. So I guess is there any additional, so besides updating the status, is there additional, will they be creating a new treatment plan at re-enrollment?
Yes, they should be. If we have a family that's in a tough enough spot that we decide we need to re-enroll them, we should essentially be doing all of the enrollment paperwork with them again. So with most of our families, we would do instead just like a follow-up support visit, or sometimes we've called those booster visits. And so right now, they're recording those on the non-traditional form. Mm-hmm. So for instance, and it's not uncommon, that maybe we've worked with a family for a year and a half and we focus in on parenting support and we focus in on maybe some counseling skills. Mm-hmm. And then that family ends up in respite because mom had a huge health issue, she lost her job, she lost her house, and now they're homeless. And so that parent is needing some more intensive support around that specific crisis. So we might have like 3 or 4 visits that are more case management focused just to help get her into housing, because we know she doesn't need the full program again. She just needs a little support for this period of time. So those would just be tracked as non-traditional follow-up visits with families.
So if they're just getting a support visit, should their status be updated to re-enrolled?
No, I think they should still be kept as graduated.
Okay.
Re-enrolled would only be if they are fully enrolling in our program again.
Okay.
And that's pretty rare, but it will sometimes happen if it's been a couple of years between times, or like if we worked with somebody just really on counseling concerns and then they have a new baby and all their other kids are teenagers and they want to do parenting work, then we might re-enroll them to do that.
And so when they're re-enrolled, my question is surrounding a date of re-enrollment. Would that be captured when the enrollment papers are filled out again, or do you need to capture a date somewhere else?
No, I think that could be captured when the enrollment papers are filled out again.
Okay, and then I'm thinking back on the discharge summary again, which I think I already closed. But there was the length of time in FEP.
Yes.
Does that include their previous enrollment, or does this?
No, that's just for that specific one.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Okay.
So that could even be auto-calculated from their date of enrollment to their date of discharge.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so then I'm going to move on to the next story a little bit because I think it includes some of the re-enroll information. But this is the report of FEP graduates using the nursery after graduation. And it says, as an in-home staff user, I need a report of FEP graduates using the nursery after graduation so that I can see a report of clients using the nursery after graduation. Does this include re-enrolled clients? Does this report include re-enrolled clients?
So if they're re-enrolled, I think we would just consider them active.
Okay.
So I think what we're trying to capture here is people that have graduated, they're not in FEP anymore, but they're using the nursery. And again, that's more for evaluating if maybe they need like a follow-up visit from their FEP counselor.
Okay. And so is there, I guess, are there any time restrictions that need to be considered for this report?
No.
Okay. And then I just forgot my next question. I'm sorry. Oh, do you have a copy of this report already, or is this something that you're looking for from the new system?
This is something we're looking for in the new system. We certainly do not have this report. I think we had a student try to do a project on it once, and she had a really hard time.
Okay, great. So yeah, no, I was just looking for any additional information you would want to see on this report besides, the name of the guardian and what services they're receiving. So
I think it would be nice to, in terms of, because I think this is something that we would be using to inform continuous quality improvement.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the primary focus of this story. So it would be nice to know how long ago they graduated.
Okay, yeah.
So if we're seeing repeat nursery use from people that graduated 2 years ago, maybe we start looking a little bit more at how we're offering longer term support for families versus that looks different if it's they're using us the week after they graduate. Those mean kind of two different things.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's great. Okay, so I think that covers everything that I have on re-enrollment and services after graduation. So I'll toss it over to Jason or Stephen to see if either of you have any other questions.
I'm good.
Yep, I'm all set too. This is great information. I only hope that I got all of it in the notes. I'm glad we have a recording.
Right. And then I was going to ask you, Lindsay, is there anything that we're missing or that we didn't address with FEP graduation or re-enrollment or services after graduation?
I don't think so right now. I do have kind of like, I do think that with FEP, just because, like I said, we haven't ever had a system to track it, that, yeah, this one might be a little bit more challenging in that we start building it out and then we have more feedback, a little bit more so than with respite.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great. Yeah, so similar to like we did the last sprint, we'll try and start building stuff out, and then we'll bring it up on those status calls and be able to get feedback then. And then obviously in testing, you'll be able to really dive in and provide more testing there. So yeah, we'll be in touch along the way. So, and we did skip around a little bit, so it might seem a little disjointed, but we'll try and make it as smooth as possible. So yeah. So that's all the stories that we wanted to complete today. So thank you for plowing through with us. We do have 3 more stories that we wanted to tackle in this sprint, but like Stephen said earlier, they're billing stories. So a couple of them, we have Laura listed as a feature owner, and then we have you listed as a feature owner as well. But these are specifically for respite billing, and I think we talked about scheduling something later this week. So yeah.
Great.
Lindsay, would you like to be on that too? Right now, I was just seeing what Laura's availability would look like to try and free you up a little bit. But if you'd like to be on it as well, we can work on that.
Oh no, I think Laura's got it covered.
Okay.
Well, good. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Maddie.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm really sorry to interrupt. I hate doing that, but I do want to real quick, just to make sure we're all on the same page when we do this. Well, do you mind scrolling up to the top of these notes?
Yes. All the way up.
All the way up, yeah. Okay, so I do have a list of different decisions we made today, and then as well as just action items, which are mostly if there was a form that we said we'd have you send over, Lindsay. That's most of what that is. But I just want to make sure, real quick, we recap the decisions. So using that actual red flag icon to indicate what a flag would be on the discharge summary, or if that ends up being sort of in a different form, like on a client admission file. Just that one decision. We also talked about no need to actually automatically generate a critical client status based on different things that are shown. Tracking items given via a multi-select pick list and then a number field for helping with reporting. And I believe that was on the discharge summary as well.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about, so the parent discharge, I don't know that it was stay, but there was the parent discharge. It was like almost like a survey form that should stay on paper because it would be anonymous. And then that therapeutic treatment planning tool, also something that is done on paper, shouldn't be completed in the system. It would be optional to upload to the therapeutic treatment plan.
Yes.
All sound good to you? Okay. And then in the action items, I will send this list to you as well. Several of them you sent over during the day or during the meeting, and then I'll just send you the complete list just to circle back and make sure we're able to get to those.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for all of your help.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys, and thank you so much for being willing to start at 2 today. And last week it just got a little bit chaotic, so I really appreciate the flexibility. I know it's a lot to coordinate everyone's schedule. So
yeah, no, thank you for carving us into your day, because we know you're busy as well. So, yeah, then I guess we will see you on Thursday on the status call then.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
That's good.
All right.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.